Amidst fears of Quebec separating from Canada, a bold idea emerges: unity through diversity. Demands for new rights test our tolerance. Ancestral lands are threatened, and Indigenous voices asserted, as the Canadian experiment enters a new century. We are explorers, risk-takers, and dreamers, fighting the odds in a land of extremes. Across a vast continent, we build a nation. Truly strong and free. In 1965, Canada unveils our new flag. Three years later, our next Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, shares a new vision of Canada.
This beautiful, rich, and energetic country of ours can become a model of the just society in which peoples of many cultures will live in harmony.
Trudeau becomes the first world leader to make multiculturalism official policy. It puts Canada on the world stage. By 1971, 80% of our immigrants are from Europe. That's about to change. 1978, South China Sea. Hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese are in peril. On this boat, 300 are crammed into a vessel made for 100. They've had to flee their home. The communist takeover of South Vietnam has become a brutal dictatorship. These overcrowded boats are the only way out.
We thought that maybe on the ocean there was that 0.001% that we might survive and we might have another life, another beginning.
Many will drown. The international media report their plight, but most governments are slow to respond. In Toronto, one man is determined to help the Vietnamese refugees. Former student activist and philosophy professor Howard Edelman.
The front pages never stopped. It had a story every day about the tragedy.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
I organized a meeting at my house of a priest and a couple of rabbis and a minister, all people I knew in the neighborhood.
What's happening to these people is a crime.
As a Jewish Canadian, Edelman fears history is repeating itself.
Well, for me, it was never again.
On the South China Sea, among the 300 refugees on this boat, are Nguyen Ngoc Nan and his family.
It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
After a week at sea, a huge storm hits. Nan's wife and son are up on deck.
Come up here. Our son is so weak, he's so cold.
The men have been ordered to stay below, to stabilize the tiny vessel. Nan makes a decision that changes his destiny.
The rain was falling very hard, and my 4-year-old son was just trembling. He was so cold and his skin turned pale, and he was just so scared.
The boat is within 300 meters of its destination, Malaysia, but the government there doesn't want any more refugees. Malaysian police fire warning shots at the boat, which is being torn apart by the storm. Their only hope is an empty water jug.
So I told my wife to grab one. But I told my son, now we pray. It happened very quick. After 1-2 minutes, everything's gone. There's only a big sea.
161 people die that night, and as many as 600,000 people will die in this crisis. Howard Edelman gets calls at all hours. People want to help bring Vietnamese refugees to Canada. The head of Canada's resettlement programs has told Edelman about a new change to the Immigration Act.
They told us about the clause in the act that allowed private sponsorship of refugees.
By directly sponsoring Vietnamese refugees, Edelman and his community don't have to wait for the government to act.
People wanted to do something. And we quickly organized that we would sponsor 50 families in this riding.
Looks good.
What united us all is a sense of what Canada was and should be.
Across the globe, Nan lands on a beach in Malaysia.
I tried to look around to try to find my wife, and I saw more than 100 bodies. I found my son, and I recognized right away that his forehead was broken, maybe by a piece of wood from the boat. And he died already. I never saw my wife again.
Within 1 week, Edelman's team quadruples.
Hi, Howard speaking.
And the movement is about to become much bigger.
I said, we can do it far more than just this constituency. Why not do it across the country?
It will be called Operation Lifeline.
We had 66 chapters by the end of 8 days.
Spring 1979. Canadian immigration officials travel to refugee camps in Malaysia to offer Nguyen Ngoc Nan and others a new start.
When the Canadian delegate came, and I talked to them, and I found that the Canadian people are so nice.
Within 1 year, 7,000 Canadian sponsors give a new home to 30,000 Vietnamese refugees.
It was a kind of coordination between the public, the government, and the media. So you had this whole sense of the Canadians coming together to do this.
We didn't arrive here as immigrants. We arrived here as adoptive children or something. You know, so as if a family was waiting for us to arrive. So I fell in love from that first moment.
July 1979. The momentum built by Howard Edelman's group leads Ottawa to announce they will match all private sponsorships. 60,000 Vietnamese refugees become new Canadians. Nan becomes a writer and host of an internationally syndicated TV show. He starts a new family in his new home.
I just thrill at what I see. And I think if it grows and keeps growing, it's just more blessings. We live in a blessed country.
We live in a society that is based on a foundation of inclusion and tolerance and equal rights.
Over the next 10 years, Canada accepts immigrants from dozens of new nations. By the turn of the century, they comprise the majority of new Canadians.
There are a lot of people like my family in this country, who are profoundly grateful for that sense of being able to participate in an experiment, you can call it, that we are part of.
Today, some former Vietnamese refugees pay it forward. Nguyen Tran Davies sponsors refugees from Syria.
To know that they're finally safe, away from the war.
She's saying, thanks God that they are here.
Welcome to your new home.
Canada's vision of a multicultural society leads Canadians to another challenge, from accepting newcomers to accommodating their differences. This will challenge long-held Canadian tradition. In 1989, Baltej Singh Dillon wants to join the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Dillon is a Sikh, a member of the 9th largest religion in the world. Many male Sikhs do not cut their hair, and they wear turbans.
Wearing a turban to Sikhs is very important because it is a symbol of who we are, and it is a symbol of not only our culture, but our religion.
In the 1970s, tens of thousands of Sikhs immigrate to Canada. Dillon and his family settle in Surrey, BC. Our institutions struggle to keep up with an increasingly diverse Canada.
So when the opportunity came along to work as a volunteer with the RCMP, I took it. This is what the community needs, because there weren't many police officers that spoke the language. And I was able to support or serve someone in their greatest time of need.
Dillon applies to join the force. He'll have to get in shape to pass the physical. And there's a tougher hurdle. The look of the RCMP is entrenched in law.
The expectation was that I would be wearing a Stetson and I'd be clean shaven and, on this black steed. I didn't look like them. And I really had no plans of taking my turban off.
Dillon's commitment to his religion will place him against this iconic symbol of Canada. 1989. Sikh Canadian Baltej Singh Dillon wants to serve his adopted country as a member of the RCMP. He volunteers for 3 years and applies to join. But an article in a BC magazine complains that Dillon is challenging RCMP tradition.
There were pockets of experiences that I certainly would chalk up to racism.
Undeterred, Dillon takes the RCMP physical.
Come on. There you go.
And passes.
And I got the call. Baltej, I've got a job offer for you. Wow. It was huge. And then came the but. The RCMP does not have a uniform policy that can accommodate your turban and your beard. So, the job offer is here, as long as you're prepared to remove your turban, cut your hair, shave your beard. Thank you for the offer, but I'm not prepared to sacrifice my commitment to my Creator, to my faith, for a job.
Sikh leaders point out that turbaned Indian soldiers fought alongside Canadians in 2 world wars. But over 90,000 Canadians signed petitions against changing the look of the RCMP. October 4th, 1989. Petitions are presented in Parliament.
These petitioners say that the RCMP has a long and honorable tradition.
What are they asking? Are they asking for me to simply wear a hat? Or are they asking me to strip down my principles? I'm not willing to do that.
It was a very sad moment for Sikh Canadians because we really felt that we had come a long way in defining who we were as people and as our religion.
It calls into question so many ideas of assimilation and what we're willing to sacrifice and what part of us we're willing to deny.
Those that were, sort of supervising me were very supportive. They're the ones that are asking me to join.
The RCMP commissioner knew that if they wanted, to diversify, they would have, to revisit some policies to make sure that the RCMP would reflect the fact that Canada was a multicultural society.
But it's the federal government that decides whether the force can change uniform policy. On March 15th, 1990, Ottawa changes the rules, allowing Sikhs in the RCMP to wear their turban and beard.
The modifications to the regulations reflects this government's strong commitment to a multicultural society.
Dylan now has his legal rights. But throughout his training, he receives threats.
We've got a bullet with your name on it. If you ever get posted here, we'll show you what it's like to be a Mountie in this town.
May 13th, 1991. Completing his training, Dylan becomes a full-fledged member of the RCMP.
Now, I'm wearing a uniform, and I have a job to do.
Constable Baltej Dylan reports to work in Quesnel, BC.
I really don't know what to make of this. I don't know if this is like, hey, way to go, Baltej, or you rotten scumbag, you've changed the face of the RCMP. I didn't know what to do with that.
He soon finds out.
They know who I am, and based on my experience with bikers, this isn't going to go well.
Welcome to Quesnel.
I was profiling them as people were profiling me.
I'm happy to say that he fought and that Canadians rallied around him in order for him to keep his identity and to become a successful part of this country.
A country that has the capacity to look beyond appearances and delve deeper. I am so excited for Canada, a country that's accepting, not tolerant, accepting.
Canada is paving the way for new Canadians. But Indigenous nations continue to be ignored and fight just for a seat at the table. February 1976. Inuit leaders fly to Ottawa. They are led by John Amagwalik. He's the executive director of the Inuit Land Claims Project, fighting to protect the rights of their people and their land.
Our language and culture were being threatened through the education system, through the assimilation policies of the government. We were losing control of our resources and the management of our wildlife.
In the 1970s, the race to exploit the North's resources goes into high gear. Underneath this stunning landscape, billions of dollars of oil, gas, and minerals. The Inuit have almost no input, despite living here long before Canada existed.
The international oil companies all of a sudden got very interested in the Canadian Arctic, and they just came in droves. They were pretty much allowed to do whatever they wanted by the government of Canada.
The Inuit make up 85% of the population in the Eastern Arctic. But that area has been part of the Northwest Territories for 100 years. Decisions for the Inuit are made in Yellowknife and Ottawa.
We just want to be able to be part of the decisions instead of the decisions being made for us.
John Amagwalik and his fellow leaders will challenge the Canadian government on who will govern their home and people. Inuit leader John Amagwalik moved to the eastern high Arctic at 6 years old. That's when he and his family were relocated from their home in northern Quebec.
I think the passion he had was driven from since he was a child.
We got our first contact with the government of Canada in 1953 when the RCMP came to our small camp.
The Amagwaliks are among 87 Inuit who are moved 2,000 kilometers north to Resolute Bay. The government claims that the high Arctic relocation will be beneficial for the Inuit.
They described it in very glowing terms. They said that there were plenty of wildlife. It was completely the opposite of what we saw. It was like landing on the moon. No vegetation, very few fish. We were often hungry.
It was such a level of disrespect towards the Inuit people. They were just pawns in a bigger game.
It's the dawn of the Cold War, and Canada wants to show the Soviet Union that our far north is inhabited.
They were moved for sovereignty purposes, and they are the human flagpoles of this country in the north.
Around young John's neck, his ID. The government gives all Inuit people a number.
My disc number was A91512. The government of Canada had a view of our people that we were something less than human beings.
The insulation for his family's igloo is scavenged newspaper.
I remember looking up into the dome of our igloo and seeing all these images. It made me realize that there's a huge world out there.
When John Amagwalik is 29, he and his colleagues are ready to present their proposal for a new territory they call Nunavut. In the Inuktitut language, it means our land. February 1976, Ottawa. They meet with government negotiators from the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. Instead of a reserve just for the Inuit, Amagwalik wants a territory open to all.
We didn't want to copy the reserve system in southern Canada. We didn't want to create a government based on ethnicity.
We wanted a government that is closer to us, that serves us, reflects the people that it serves, understands our culture, our values, and our priorities.
But the Canadian government isn't ready for this revolutionary proposal for the resource-rich area.
Not a chance.
The government told us that we could talk about hunting rights and soapstone. That was it. It became very clear right from the beginning that there was a huge distance between our two positions.
Seeking support, Amagwalik and his colleagues spend the next few years traveling across Canada.
Visiting all the provinces, all the capitals, and talking to whoever would listen to us.
Amagwalik and other Indigenous leaders are invited to the Federal Provincial Conference of First Ministers on Aboriginal constitutional matters, where they will negotiate with Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. March 9, 1984.
You have failed to agree that Aboriginal peoples have the democratic and human right to self-government. You have self-government. You elect your member of parliament.
We got to know the premiers, we got to know the prime minister, and relations became much more serious.
But in the corridors of power,
John, can I have a word?
Amagwalik hears ominous rumors.
Off the record, you better play ball. The provinces, they have a plan B. You extend the borders all the way north, right up to the Arctic Ocean.
The threat is that if the Inuit don't drop their push for Nunavut, the provinces will take over all Arctic territory.
I don't know if it was attempt at intimidation or it's just ignorance. I just don't know.
When Trudeau leaves office, Amagwalik and his colleagues keep negotiating with our next Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney. Negotiations stall, and there's no deal for Nunavut.
Mulroney was such a strong opposition to it. But there were times when you had to push, and I learned to push.
He just shows that you can't give up. You have to keep going, and you have to have the eye on the prize.
Amagwalik finally catches a break when support for the Mulroney government plummets.
Their public support was around 10%, 11% at the time.
Over the years, Amagwalik masters the corridors of power. He meets with an aide to the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development.
Can I be honest with you here? Well, your government is falling apart. You're going to be out of a job soon.
I told him, we're prepared to wait for a few more months, and when you guys lose the election, we're going to convince the Liberals to sign this agreement.
Well, if you want a great news story, this is it. Make history with me, right now.
Let me call the minister.
Amagwalik's strategy works.
Apparently some phone calls were made to the Prime Minister. You had to be aggressive sometimes.
May 25, 1993, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney signs the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement.
We are forging a new partnership, a real partnership, not only between the Government of Canada and the future government of Nunavut, but between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians.
We were happy that we had finally arrived at what we had been working for 25 years.
He sacrificed his whole life so that we could have a voice.
April 1st, 1999. The new territory of Nunavut is born in its capital, Iqaluit. Inuktitut becomes one of the official languages of the territory. Our land, Nunavut, is the size of Western Europe. The Inuit now have input on resource development and on the future of the Northwest Passage, a shipping route to connect Asia to Europe. John Amagwalik and his fellow Inuit leaders redraw the map of Canada.
Trudeau brought the Constitution home. We brought Nunavut home again to its rightful place.
But as the country moves forward in the north, Indigenous peoples in southern Quebec are engaged in an historic standoff.
Why make a deal? They're only going to break it.
40 kilometers west of Montreal is the town of Oka, Quebec. Next to it is the ancestral Mohawk land of Kanesatake, with unresolved land claims going back 300 years. In 1989, the town of Oka wants to expand their golf course and build a condominium on Mohawk burial grounds.
The dispute was about a golf course extending over the last standing area of pines and a cemetery, a Mohawk cemetery.
When the golf course is approved, the Mohawk blockade roads leading to their land.
Our people didn't want to leave. They wanted to protect what they had left. The land, our people, our future, survival.
Oka was not unusual as a resistance. In that First Nations have stood up and said, no, We're drawing a line in the sand. What was unusual was that it was an armed resistance.
July 11th, 1990, when a police SWAT team advance on the Mohawk and a Quebec police officer is killed, the nation watches on edge, fearful of what's next.
There was the assumption that there was going to be, a great battle.
It was a horrendous time. It made me angry, and it made me just angry.
Since the death of a Quebec police officer, the Mohawk behind the barricades at Kanesatake fear a massive retaliation is being planned. Both sides monitor each other. Police set up their own barricades. Now they control all access to food, clothing, and medicine. Officially, they hope to stop weapons from reaching the Mohawk.
No oil?
They took it.
But basic staples are often confiscated. Thrust into this historic moment with her fellow Mohawk is Wanique Horn. At 14 years old, she manages to sneak behind the barricades to join her mother, Kontaneta, to defend their ancestral land.
What has stuck with me to this day is the strength of the women and the men. I was watching how they acted and how they spoke and how they carried themselves.
Members of the media have been allowed behind the blockade. The rest of Canada now sees what is happening at Oka.
We were so used to other voices speaking on our behalf. And so the Indigenous people were saying, no, we're going to speak for ourselves.
Oka was really the moment where Indigenous peoples across the country sort of woke up and raised their consciousness and contributed to calls for change.
The Mohawk refused to back down, even after threats that the army will be sent in. For 1 month, the nation watches a stalemate.
What you're seeing here is the area known as the Pines, where the Mohawk warriors, women, and children are camped out.
On day 31 of the crisis, Ottawa sends in a negotiator with the government's final offer. The Mohawk are a matriarchal society. The women do the negotiating. They discover that the federal government has bought the disputed land from the town of Oka. The golf course won't be built. But Mohawk negotiator Ellen Gabriel wants what has eluded her people for hundreds of years.
So why not just give us the deed to our land?
Before negotiating that, the government wants the blockade to end. Day 41. With the Quebec government strained and worried about the safety of the police, Ottawa sends in the army.
There was a lot of anger seeing the might of the Canadian Armed Forces being brought down on us. And the tanks rolling in and the soldiers all fully armed coming at us.
And then that's when it hit me. The Canadian military is in a war with its own people.
Having helicopters hovering 24 hours a day and little kids being so scared, I would always be hyper aware of my little sister was. And shots had been fired, so everybody was on high alert.
Food and supplies are becoming scarce. The Mohawk are running out of time.
The army started to cinch in their perimeter, and there was a constant state of anxiety and fear.
Throughout the crisis, marches and rallies in solidarity with the Mohawk have brought Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians out into the streets.
The first time there was solidarity across the country, and we knew that, and that mattered a lot to us.
The sympathy in Canada was totally pro-natives. They were encouraging the Mulroney government to say, yes, step in, stop this.
The Mohawk have been promised that the government will continue talks for a land settlement. They prepare to emerge.
We had lasted 78 days. It did headline newscasts around the world and change people's attitude and about Canada and its relationship with Indigenous people, and that was important.
September 26, 1990. The Mohawk leave the perimeter. Wanique carries her 4-year-old sister in her arms.
We didn't know what was going to happen once we left, and we had pretty good idea that they were going to go after particular warriors. And people started to pour out onto the road, and then fights started to break out. The soldiers started freaking out. Particular warriors were attacked, and so all chaos broke loose. And I saw a soldier I recognized, because he, 2 weeks earlier, hadn't allowed my school books in, my grade 10 textbooks. And I recognized him, and I kind of went, I know you. I stepped forward, and that's when I got hit in the chest. And someone kicked my feet out from underneath me, and I went flying backwards, and my little sister landed on top of me.
Wanique has been stabbed by a bayonet a centimeter from her heart. A news photographer catches the moment. After being stabbed at Oka, 14-year-old Wanique Horn recovers from her wound, but is left traumatized.
I'm just so hurt, and I'm so scared, and I'm so confused.
Before Oka, she was a provincial swimming champ and dreamt of playing water polo at the Olympics. Now, she wants to quit.
My mom said, well, if you give up now, you're handing that gift over to that soldier who stabbed you. And for the rest of your life, you're going to be his victim. She looked at me, she said, remember, I did not raise you to be anybody's victim. And I did go back to water polo.
Wanique becomes co-captain of her water polo team. They win gold at the 1999 Pan Am Games, and she does compete at the Olympics.
As hard as Oka was to go through, it was a really, really important wake-up call for Canada.
We don't revere and celebrate our Indigenous people the way we should. I think that we're still struggling with that relationship in a big way.
Until we figure out which way we want to go in that direction, then we're bound to still make the same mistakes, and no one's going to get progress any further. Country's not going to be stronger. We need to just take a fresh look and see how we want to approach this as nation to nation.
There's elements of Canada that I'm very proud of, and there's elements that I'm very ashamed of and I'm angry about. But I see Canada kind of as a team. Like, we seek to create the strongest, most effective, most positive team possible, and it's not there yet, but we could be there. That's something that I look forward to.
What is it about this relationship between Canadians and Indigenous people that has brought us to today?
One of the biggest disconnects in Canada is between the Canadian population and Indigenous people, and in large part that's because there's a huge part of history missing from the textbooks.
You read all the great statements made by Indigenous leaders over hundreds of years. They're all about welcoming people into the circle.
We have a great, great country, which is very complex, sometimes schizophrenic. But overall, I have a lot of hope.
I think diversity, tolerance, listening, welcoming, knowing that these things actually make us more powerful.
What's exciting about Canada is that we don't have one singular identity.
A country that can bring together such diversity and live in peace and harmony and view it as our strength.
Against all odds, despite its vast dimensions, harsh landscape, and modest population, Canada has grown strong.
Nobody looking at it objectively from the outside would say, yeah, I'm going to put my money on Canada.
There's something still quite wild about Canada. We've found a way to turn this to our advantage and make it something unique.
The Canadian spirit, I think, is rich, and it feeds off of this whole history of people underestimating us and what we can do and what is possible.
In extreme circumstances, we find strength in us that we don't think we have.
We embrace service, supporting, and people have done ridiculous things, risking everything.
I think we all want to live for something greater than ourselves. And when we have that opportunity, we gotta take it.
Our changemakers move the country forward.
It's very important for all of us to look at trailblazers and their impact.
We did it, boys!
As human beings, we need positive stories in our life.
Strike now! Strike now!
It's never just one hammer that knocks down a wall. I think it's always like a constant push, sometimes over decades.
We all have a story. We all have an impact. It is a part of the human spirit.
Despite tremendous differences, a unique country emerges.
What's amazing about it is we did it. And the story of the people who did it, the individuals who did it, is the story of everybody who's here now.
Eyeing the future, one thing seems clear. We will find wisdom in our past to voyage with confidence into the new adventures of our future.
We've built strong institutions. We've built democratic institutions. We've managed to build something, I think, which is strong and flexible and has managed to contain all sorts of differences. And I think this is a real achievement.
I think the real story of Canada is still being written, and I think the most interesting stories about Canada will be written in the future.
In a time when resources around the world are becoming scarcer and more expensive, Canada sees itself as poised to play a big role in the global economy.
We're carving out a kind of future which has not been seen in exactly this form anywhere else in history.
We have the chance to finally be able to call the shots for ourselves and be in the best standing that we've ever been. I think Canada is the best country the world's come up with.